turned off due to lack of anything. Okay, this is now recording.
Great. It's 6:30, so the meeting is in order. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just introduce the board members. I'll start. Michael Archambault. I'm a townsfolk here in Lyman.
Dave Dulong, also from Lyman.
Don Brand, also Lyman.
We need to start with nominations for the board chair and also for the board secretary. Are there any nominations for the board chair?
I nominate Mike for chair.
Second. You're it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I accept the nomination. Are there any nominations for the board secretary?
I nominate Mr. Dulong.
I'll accept, but I don't know if you get to nominate.
I'll nominate Mr. Dulong.
Okay, I'll accept. Who's gonna?
All in favor?
Somebody's got a second
Oh.
yet.
I did.
Okay,
Second. All in favor?
everybody.
Everybody. Unanimous. We don't have any old business. The new business is tonight. So just real quick rundown on how this hearing is going to play out. We're going to hear from the introduction of the appellant, the introduction from the assessing department. Then we're going to swear in both parties. And then there'll be a presentation from the appellant, a cross-examination of the appellant by the assessing department. The board members can question the appellant. Then the assessor presents a cross-examination of the assessor by the appellant. The board member can question the assessor. Then there'll be a closing remarks. And at that point, or there'll be closing remarks, any public comment. And then at that point, the hearing will be closed. So we'll do Robert's rules. We'll close the hearing and then deliberations will be among the board. There will not be a back and forth with the audience or either party while the board deliberates. And then the board will make an action, vote on the action, and then adjourn the meeting with a written decision followed. Any questions about the hearing in general? All right. Would the appellant please introduce yourself?
George Bourgeois from Lyman here.
Great.
How do you pronounce the last name?
I always used to say Burgess, but when I got married again, my wife likes Bourgeois, which is
Bourgeois?
the proper pronunciation.
Okay,
I like that.
But nobody knows me as Bourgeois, so George Burgess or Bourgeois.
Bourgeois. All right. Great. Thanks. And the town of Lyman assessor?
Lori Gonska.
All right, great. I'm going to swear you both in. So all persons who are going to testify on this matter, please raise your right hand.
Stan probably can raise your right hand.
Jim Murphy also.
I see Jim. Jim's right hand is up. Thank you, Jim. Do you swear that the testimony to be provided in this matter is the truth? Jim? I saw Jim say I do. Joe?
I do.
Great. We have all three sworn in. Lori, quick question. Determination of standing. Does there need to be an assessor motion statement?
No, it's more or less determining standing. I can't push this off.
Okay.
Motion to be released.
Okay. Mr. Bourgeois, would you, it's your presentation, your time for presentation.
Okay. I thought it was the other way around, but that's fine.
Did you get a,
I did, yeah, yeah.
Dave.
I'm sorry.
So is it okay if I just go right along?
Yeah, please.
What I
any way
put
you
down?
want to do it, yep.
Okay. I mean, initially, uh, got my tax assessment and was kind of shocked because it had gone up quite a bit for, legitimate reasons. But I decided, well, I thought about questioning that. And the reason I did is because I know that, the reason I had originally separated out these lots, I think I explained in here, it was because I plan on giving all the land eventually to my kids and my grandkids. So I thought the way to do it was to get a survey it out, and then prepare deeds and have them go out to the kids, even though kids are as young as I think 12 years old is the youngest right now. But I thought that would accomplish my purpose, and I did so. And as a result, I think that's what caused my taxes to go up by about fivefold from previous year or so. So I decided to look at other vacant lots in town by looking at the records that were available to me online. And, I could pick up I don't know what you call them, but I can look up every property on the tax maps, and I can look up whether there's homes on that or whether there isn't. And I found just a slew of them. I listed them out for my own purpose, and then I drove around looking for them and to see where they were. And the ones I looked at were all on paved roads, all with utilities right available to them, and therefore, in my mind, very, very easy to develop and turn into house lots and what have you. I couldn't understand why my lot, which is just about a half a mile into thick woods with nothing available to it, would be assessed at the same value as these lots were. So I filed a request to have my taxes abated. I did receive a 25% adjustment. I asked, I didn't think that was enough, but I asked the assessor, Lori, and she was kind enough to very quickly get to me her information, I guess what she based her decision on, in giving me the 25% and in turning down my request for a larger abatement. And then being retired, having a lot of time on my hands, and I decided to dig into that a little bit because so I looked at the properties, and make a long story short, and maybe I should tell the long story, but I mean, it just, I didn't feel that the way she was placing the new assessed value on my property, and not to be negative, but I didn't feel it made any sense. I didn't feel that there was any logic to any rationale to it that I could accept. I felt that it was a very, very arbitrary way of assigning a value to that lot. So I looked at some of the properties, and I think there were 13. I know there were 13 that she presented to me that she had used in her analysis or review of my initial request. Of the 13, I think 7 of them I ruled out. And I say I ruled out. I mean, I've heard all my life that with properties, it's location, location, location as far as land is concerned. And I started to think, well, what makes a difference in values in land? One of the things that very dramatically makes a difference, I mean, I live on Kennebunk Pond. I'm taxed very highly on the value of that land. It is waterfront land. The assessor used, I think, 3 properties at least in her analysis, and she used waterfront land. I didn't figure that in any way should be a comparison to my property. My property's out in the middle of the woods. I think she used 2 or 3 properties that are in commercial zones. One is a gravel pit or over by a gravel pit. Another is down by Jackson's Corner. I felt that these weren't worth looking at, let alone the fact that, these lots, I think one of them was 70 some odd acres in size. And I'm confident that a real estate appraiser, and I know they're not the same as assessors, but I'm confident a real estate appraiser would never go out and appraise a lot like mine and look for comps in the way of waterfront properties or commercial properties. They just rule those out. I then decided to see if I could find other properties again, with limited resources, just the computer there and what it shows. But other properties that were getting breaks, I guess, in assessing. And I had noted that the assessor had said she used a 25% factor. Well, in my presentation to you folks, the Board of Assessing Review, I took three of her examples and I compared them. And the map and lots are there. I don't know if I should repeat them for purposes of the microphone or not, but map 2, lot 4A, map 3, lot 89-1, and map 11, lot 20. Map 2, lot 4A is a waterfront property. That was given a 25% abatement. That 25% abatement taken against the assessed value of that property brings the credit or the abatement itself to $61,000. Now, my lot was valued at 68, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it amounts to $15,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood when you make a 25% adjustment. The next lot, 389-1, that was more similar to mine, and it's in a general purpose zone, general purpose residential zone, much lower assessed value. The same 25% adjustment was made, and it comes out to $15,666 in the way of an abatement. That's what, a $45,000, $46,000 difference. Do I think that? I mean, now when we're talking difference for the same factor, I guess I'd call it, we're talking about a distance due to, well, access. But what does access mean? Access means the ability to get to it, I would say. And by that, what do you have to get to it for? We have to get to it to bring utilities to it, to your electric to it, your cable TV or whatever to it. And you have to get to it so you can go in and out with your automobile, or if there's a fire, so the fire department can get to you. If there's 911, so they can get to you. I mean, that to me is access. That to me is directly related to the distance that the property is from these services, from this road, from this electrical availability. The third property I put down there was one of hers that was in the commercial zone. And I did notice today that I'd made an error on my chart that's later on in the presentation here, but I didn't make the error here. The commercial zone 1121. Okay, I didn't make the error there. That's a gravel pit, I believe. And commercial property, to my mind, is always valued higher than just a residential lot. And consequently, even though that lot is only about 100 feet away from a road and from utilities, it received a $92,000 abatement. To me, there's no question in my mind that is telling me this is not the way to make an adjustment for access. I strongly feel that there are other ways to do that. Now, I thought that the assessor was going to go first, and I really was going to question her because I don't know the answers to these questions. But I was going to ask her how that figure is arrived at. She mentioned in her presentation that I received afterwards for this meeting, CAMA, which I guess is a computer system that's used, as well as KRT's appraisal, which was done a couple of years ago or a few years ago. And as I recall, I remember getting those figures because I owned a few pieces of land in my house, getting those figures and then told, throw them out, just use last year's because they screwed up, basically. I'll say it that way. But anyways, I don't know how those two interact. I mean, they went out and did their review. CAMA, whatever that stands for, is the computer program. And maybe, I'm guessing, that what they did for their review, they're taking then some base figures that they have established, like value of a certain type of house or value of a piece of land, and inputting that into the program so that then it can churn up the other variables that come in and make the calculations. But if that's the case, then I assumed that maybe, and I received from the assessor, and I think you all did, volumes of paperwork. It made me have to put more toner in my copying machine because I ran out. But volumes of paperwork, a lot of which I didn't understand. But a lot of it was results of the KRT analysis. I believe that's what it is, results. Now, of all of these sales that were utilized, these are sales between April 1 of 2018 and March 31st of 2020. Of all the sales, there were 12 land sales. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, these 12 land sales then, I think if I had the wording of, and I do have the wording, so bear with me. I just have to find it. Well, she says in there that, what's it? No, oh, I guess it's behind all of these. I'm sorry. I apologize for the delay. Okay, she says that I need to mention this, but the lack of evidence provided by the taxpayer being me, to prove that the assessed value was manifestly wrong meets grounds for denial. However, before denying it, she did her research. Let me see. Well, this isn't exactly where she mentioned the KRT. I guess it's previous page. KRT performed a full revaluation of Lyman properties for assessment year 2020. Sales data utilized for the purpose of completing analysis for market value spanned a 2-year period, April 1, 2018 to March 31, 2020. Only sales confirmed to be qualified arm's length or market-oriented transactions were utilized. Land tables were developed consisting of neighborhood zones, each assigned a land factor. Note, subject property falls on the lowest land schedule. Land schedule 1, standard low. So it seems to me like the KRT information was pretty important in determining what values then were in our assessments that coming year and subsequently, because I believe they're probably using the same program and the same assessments. There were only, like I said, 12. They're listed in the volumes of sheets here. There's only 12 of them. Of the 12, there's not a single one that has an access problem, not a single one. So, I strongly feel that the assessor isn't out there, excuse my terminology, because I don't really mean everything I'm saying, but the assessor isn't out there to nail everybody in the town. It's not their goal to come up with the lowest value they possibly can. I think what they're there to do is to come up with values so that those values spread around the town on all the different properties do the job of fairly distributing the tax responsibilities. It's not so important that you get George's value down as low as you possibly can, as it is that what he ends up paying is fair, considering what he's got for a piece of property there. So I don't think that, I have no criticism of Lori at all. She was very prompt in answering every question I had and got me, everything that she used, and I appreciate that. But I think the methodology is wrong. I think that, and if this is done this way only because the computer system is that way, and maybe every computer system in the state uses CAMA, I don't know. But if that's the case, I think that's wrong too. There should be another way of looking at it. How, you may ask. May you ask? Go ahead and ask. I mean, how, you may ask. I mean, that's tough to come up with, but I thought to myself, what is better? 25%, or maybe, well, how do you look at a house? And she references that in here too. She says, when you look at houses, or you can't look at land the way you look at houses. Let me see. Let me see, increase, okay. Lyman's land tables for all sites, both improved and unimproved, have the same starting value. And the value is increased, decreased from that starting value. Increases to the value are warranted when improvements to the property are made. That is a well and a septic. Decreases to the value are made due to influence factors. That is access. Then she goes on to say, which I think is kind of contradictory. No, it is incorrect to compare a subject parcel to another and start decreasing the subject parcel's tax assessment by the cost it would take to improve it. Doing so would result in unequitable assessed values throughout the town. Now, I'll throw out what my thoughts are on values. I mean, you could say it's less arbitrary than 25% of whatever. You could say that, okay, I get a deed in here. Like in the case of my property, I had one big piece of land. I broke off a piece of land. Now it's a 5-acre piece of land. The assessor gets the deed in. The assessor looks at the deed and takes the time to look at where that property is located. If the property is on a road, fine, maybe there's a certain value for that. But if the property isn't, maybe you arbitrarily say, okay, half mile away, I'm gonna give them $50,000 adjustment. 3/8 of it or whatever. 3/4 of that way, maybe I'm going to give them a 35,000, but you do it that way. You're not gonna say 17.5 miles away, I've gotta give them this. No, but that's as accurate a way of doing it. Giving figures like that as an adjustment. It makes sense. It ties in with the actual problem. The problem is, how far away is this property? It ties in with the actual problem. It is just as accurate as saying, what they got, when you're doing a house, got a 1-car garage, got a 2-car garage, got a 3-car garage. I'm gonna give them $5,000 a bay or something like that. Well, some bays cost more money than that. Baths, how many baths in that? And I think they give them a flat X number of dollars per bath. Now, I've seen baths and I've seen baths. I mean, my version of a bath might be an outhouse outside the house, but I mean, there are differences there. Now, does this mean that you get down into, all this detail? No, but you come up with figures and there's tons of adjustments that have to be made for a house. Why can't there be more than just for land, gee, it's waterfront, or gee, it's commercial, or gee, it's got difficult access? It can be more than just 25% for access. I think there were better methods. So I guess I feel that when she says here several times in her response, I think starting right off the bat, the taxpayer has not met the burden of proof that the revised assessed value is manifestly wrong. The taxpayer cannot show that the assessor's methodology resulted in unjust discrimination of his property in comparison to similar properties. Now, honestly, when I read that and I read all the law case references, my feeling was, okay, this came from some, pre-written, probably from the gentleman over there, because I was wondering who that was. But I respect his knowledge and all, but I'm assuming that to me, I meant, I'm showing right then and there, and that it's wrong. I don't know that I can ask you guys a question, but I was going to ask all four of you, given a piece of land, 5 acres, right here on a road, paved frontage, utilities running right by it, or a piece of land a half a mile in the woods, you gotta cut down trees, you gotta whatever to get up there, put a road in, put utilities in to build, which would you pay? Would you pay the same amount of money for that? I seriously doubt it. You would want to know what are the costs involved in doing this. And I did bring in, and I can give it to you or I can give it to you later, but I had a contractor, Phil Labby Excavation, he's down here in Arundel. And he was kind enough to listen to me and to take the time to put together a legitimate proposal. Now, he said, you know, it would vary a bit when he actually saw concrete plans and all. But he put together a proposal for what it would be to take a road through those woods up to my lot. That thing shocked me. It's over 300, it's 300,000 exactly, if it's 2,500. $300,000 to put a road to Lyman's specs. He called it a driveway. It wasn't really a road. It was a 16-foot wide driveway. He details in his letter, and again, I don't have the stuff. I do have it, but have it handy. You know, he details in there everything that he's going to do. And I was shocked. But here's the other thing I got. So I started searching the internet to see if I could find, you know, you can often find things that say, give me a rough idea of what it would cost for this, that, or the other thing. Here's how much does it cost to build a road on my property? Now you know, there's obviously differences between concrete, asphalt, and what have you roads. But right here, they say minimum cost. Okay, if you're building a custom home, blah, 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 or remote rural home, you may be considering adding a private road to your property. The cost of building a road ranges from $1.25 per square foot to $15 per square foot. Well, lo and behold, about the middle of that is $8. If you take 2,500 feet times 16 feet, he said he was building a 16-foot wide road, and you check out his numbers, he's right around the $8 figure. So did I believe his number? No. Do I believe it? No. Yes. I know on the sheets that I did give to you, gentlemen, I had the electric company, and I've got backup for that too. I called them, as well as getting a sheet off the internet that shows the costs. The costs are $19.44 per linear foot that they've got to run wire. Every 300 feet, she started to tell me every 100 and something feet, but I'm sure it's or 300, well, it's 300 around here, is 625 for a pole. And then there's other things that I didn't know whether I had to add into it, but I think I do. But I didn't bother doing that, because again, the $625 per pole, I thought was shocking enough. But I have that too, and Jesus, I brought these things in for you guys. Well, here's getting connected. And I do have one to give to each of you and to Lori. And I have Labby's thing too. And if you want me to dig them out right this minute, I will. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, okay. I mean, can I come up?
Yep, sure. Sorry.
Okay. I think Labby's thing is in the jacket. I don't know if you can pass those down. This is something else that I did for you guys, which is, I'll explain that if you could, I guess, give these down too. I don't know if I gave you this, if I gave you one too many proposals, let me have that back, okay? No, not, well.
Oh.
I'll give this to Lori, but of those, is there one too
Yep,
many or is
there
it
is.
just the right number?
Nope, there you go.
Okay. These two, Lori. that other sheet that I gave you with the map in the back of it, the reason I did that, that's over, those lots are over between Swan Pond and Wadley Pond. And my purpose in doing that was just to show, if you look on those maps, you'll see that the lot numbers, the lots that I've got there, hypothetically now, I'm saying, using the current assessor's methods of making adjustments for access difficulties. If those had an access difficulty, they don't, obviously, because Clark's Woods Road runs right through them. But if they did, I then have the sheet there, the top sheet that shows the assessed values of those properties and what the 25% abatement for the exact same difficulty access-wise would have. Now, my way of looking at it, there's no question in my mind that that shows that the method being used to do my adjustment has had some thought put into it. It's not meaningless like her review says here. I don't know if I've got any other, well, I also have the KRT, the 12 KRT sales that she, off of those sheets that she had passed out. These are the land sales. And I just put them down there. I mean, this is what they based, I guess, if I'm interpreting that correctly, this is what they based whatever figure went into the CAMA program for land sale. Okay. Well, I mean, one job I had early in my career was for United Aircraft. I worked for Hamilton Standard down in Connecticut years ago. And I was a guy that everybody hated. I was a work measurement analyst. And my job was to determine and set work standards for various departments. One of the ways we would do that is random sampling. I mean, we had tables and we'd look through there and it would tell us what times of day to walk through a department. And all we'd do is walk through and we'd say, gee, Dave is working. Gee, so-and-so isn't working. We'd go through and we'd just make it just passing through. That's all we had to do. But if you had enough numbers, it became meaningful. If you didn't have enough numbers, it didn't mean diddly squat. Well, anyways, those are the 12. And I guess my point there is just, I think that's a fallacy, whatever they did. Now, none of those 12, by the way, have any access problems. Every single one of them is on a paved road with utilities right there. So again, I guess that's my case right now.
Great. Thank you very much. The next step would be a cross-examination by the assessor.
Thank you.
Okay. Board questions for Mr. Bourgeois?
No,
I don't have any questions.
I'd like to defer to when the yellow through,
Yeah,
please.
we may have some at the end.
All right. If we could have the assessor presentation. Yep.
Come forward so my voice picks up. I don't talk very loud. So I'll stand it here. Okay, so you all have received my bar submission packet. You've had time to review it. Also, there is a consultant expert witness, Jim Murphy. He's present via Zoom, and he's reviewed my work. This is my work. He has reviewed it. He did include the resume in your packet. And are there any questions with his resume or credentials at this time? Okay. Before going further, I'd like to ask if any of the board members, has there been any discussion with the applicant before tonight's meeting or any visits to the site?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
thank
we
you.
did have a meeting. when
A
we had our
workshop.
workshop, but we really didn't talk about the case.
No, okay, perfect. So basically, I won't go through this step by step unless you have specific questions. I'll highlight the 2 points, okay? Number one, the applicants contesting the reduction, my reduction of the 25% on the land value, and which that reduced the value that was originally at 68,000 down to 51,000. And my action was equitable and consistent with my findings, and it's up to the Board of Assessment Review to conclude differently. And it would appear the applicant is requesting a $12,000 value and presented some mathematical defense, and it contains out-of-pocket costs that's applicable to his individual property alone. So an assessor, when assessing, must use a method that delivers equity and consistency. And making individual assessments, as done by the applicant, to just one property, his property, that are not being made to other adjustments, that the same adjustments are not being made to other properties that are similar to his access issues, that's just inappropriate. It would be all over the place throughout the whole town based on how far away you are to certain utilities. So I hope that the packet that I presented flowed okay for everyone, and it demonstrated the how assessments are derived, how the market value is derived, the fact that the base amount is the same, whether it's an improved property or not an improved property when it comes to the land. It goes step by step into it. So if I could ask Jim Murphy if he has anything to add. He has been my mentor, as you know, that I just came on board and started this position, got certified a year ago. So I have asked Jim from time to time for assistance and some help and some knowledge. So he is here tonight. And if Jim, if you have anything to say or add.
Good evening. Can you hear me well enough?
Yep.
Okay.
Very good.
I can't hear myself over the connection, but I will assume you can. As mentioned, Lori is a relatively brand new assessor. I've been doing this since 1994 with a background in assessing and in appraisal. She asked me to review the submission and to render some sort of comment and conclusion. I reviewed the submission for compliance to assessing abatements, abatement standards, and to case law. And I found independently that Lori's 2 points are correct. The assessing practice of the town with regards to consistent treatment of taxpayers is more important than being accurate in the valuation. And I know that sounds somewhat backwards. Assessors are not charged with being perfect, we're charged with being equitable. The applicant's spreadsheet D that he presented, the math is correct, but it starts out with an assessing value that already has a discounted number to it. If you look at his submission B, I believe, you will find a list of properties that show a percentage reduction. In this case, the town of Lyman has a reduction that averaged out at 26% for properties excluding number 7, number 9, and number 18. That demonstrated to me that the town was being consistent, if not perfect. Mr. Bourgeois' point on market evidence is well taken. The sales that were presented do not show any properties that don't have regular frontage on the land. And strictly speaking, there would be no support for a 25% reduction or a 50% reduction or a 75% reduction based on market evidence, which is required by the assessors to have. In this case, it sounds like the revaluation used an adjustment of 25% for non-frontage type properties. Is it supportable by the evidence? It is not, but it is something in the right direction towards being, towards recognizing properties that are not on the frontage, that don't have frontage to properties. Gifting properties to family is an admirable event. I wish more people were able to do that, and most can't. The increase in taxes is due to the recognition that the property is now a separate economic unit because it is owned by somebody else. And that is also very appropriate. It would make sense if the assessor could say, I'd like to take this property value of 68,000 and subtract 300,000 in cost away from it, and we would owe the taxpayer money instead of the other way around. But that's not really proper. And it results in a result that is not credible. And that is a standard under the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice under a hypothetical condition. And unfortunately, we're not able to run down that road because the result does not make sense. Without any additional evidence to go with, the Lyman assessor did make an adjustment. Is it perfect? No, but it is equitable. It doesn't reach to the point of being less than credible. It would be great to have some sort of market evidence. By the sounds of it, Lyman doesn't have that kind of evidence. Up here in the Mid-Coast where I am right tonight, I have plenty of evidence of backlots that sold for not very much. But that's not your market, that's my market up in this area. So other than that, I'll entertain any questions that you might have. And I'll stick around anyway for towards the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Again, I didn't follow the,
So hold on one second. Is this the end of the assessor's presentation? Perfect. Cross-examination.
okay, well, no, and I didn't remember his name.
Jim Murphy.
Okay, he mentioned 3 properties that I had submitted that were, he said were in error or
He said,
number 7 and 9. It's on my list, D.
B.
Said 18. Did he mean 13? That looked like.
No, I think it looked like he was picking the ones that had the maximum reduction.
That was list on Exhibit B,
Bravo.
list of 18
Oh, B,
that had
okay.
those excluded ones.
Right. So there was 7, 9, and I believe 18.
And
Okay.
that's my listing of what I went by to see what Lyman was doing for access issue.
Yeah, and I think
Lots.
those are out in the middle of nowhere that you couldn't even get to them.
I submitted pictures of the ones that I
Yeah.
did get to. I labeled them.
Okay. He mentioned that, again, Jim,
Yes,
you've been an appraiser, and am I correct in saying that no appraiser, if he had to appraise a piece of vacant land such as mine, would compare that with waterfront properties or commercial properties?
I didn't say that at all.
Well, I'm asking you.
Right. So most important thing with doing appraisal work, which is what I've not done here, because that is outside of the scope of what I'm doing tonight. An appraiser would hopefully find like comparable properties in which to appraise, in which to complete a market value estimate of the property.
And would waterfront and commercial properties be considered like properties to a non-commercial or waterfront property?
I wouldn't think so.
Neither would I.
If I can add something to clarify that a little bit further. That's the issue when you're trying to determine market value. When market value cannot be accomplished, you have to be equitable. Equity trumps value. So this was the way that would be
Well,
equitable.
let me ask a question. It appears to me that the reason that you used the waterfront properties was not to find out how much money should be taken off, but what the factor should be. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's the
See, that's the
factor.
difference. The factor applies to whatever the value of the assessed value of the property is. Whereas like, as we said before, when you appraise a piece of property, you want to know what it's going to sell for. But I think the examples that are given here are given for the factor evaluation, not the price evaluation.
I understand it's a factor, but it's a meaningless factor. And which is evidenced by a difference of as much as $50,000-$60,000 in the sheets that I just brought up to you, where I use as an example, lots that, over off Park Woods Road. If they're not waterfront, but they've got the same identical practically access problems, there's a difference of $50,000 in
But
those.
the factor's the same.
Yes, the factor is the same.
Okay, I just.
But what are we, when we're assessing, what is our, again, I would go back to my earlier statement at the start of this. I firmly believe that the assessor, it's not the assessor's job to just throw numbers out there. It's the assessor's job to treat each of the taxpayers relatively equal, equity, in other words. That's where the equity in my mind, and maybe I think more than just my mind, comes in. When you say something like, and I did catch that statement again about, it's more important equity than, it's right at the end of her thing here.
Then accuracy, equity, then accuracy.
Yeah,
And
when
market
it's
value.
impossible to
Market value.
secure both the standards of just value, okay, and equity required by the Maine Constitution, the duty to assess at just value yields to the duty to avoid discrimination. In other words, equity trumps value. Now, I think you're reversing that if you're saying that it's more important that these factors being used trumps an equitable solution. And I would ask any of you to say to me with a straight face that you don't feel that the costs involved in developing, or whatever you want to say, in putting in a road, putting in electricity and what have you, to a piece of land affects the just value of that land. It does. Do any of you think that it doesn't? I mean,
So, Mr. Bourgeois, just for the sake of following where we're going, this is your opportunity to cross-examine the assessor.
okay,
And so, like the board, we really aren't a play in this until we ask you questions, if we have questions.
Right,
well, I guess I am asking the question of Lori.
Okay.
that's okay.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay, well, I could kind of read from my submission with the hopes that maybe reading it out loud might make it more understandable. So what I had done to research the relativeness of access issues, because remember the land tables that were established were taken from market analysis by KRT. And land tables are all different depending on where the property is situated. And you'll notice that waterfront base values are much higher than private dirt road base values. So you're already starting at a lower value. When you go and factor in an access issue, it deducts from that starting value. So that's why it was important to do the factoring, the factor for the influence factor for the access restriction is in another way of putting it. So when I researched that access issue properties, I did drive as near to the subject site as I could, and I took photos. And then I went back to the office and got the tax maps, found similar parcels with restricted access in the town database. And then I looked at the corresponding tax maps to those parcels and tried to compare it to your parcel to see the issues, how they were back parcels, how they had right of ways to them from a private dirt road. And those are the ones that I concentrated on. Subsequent thereto, I also discovered an island property. Now, an island property that had no town road or state road going to it. An island property that the access was a private road that was off of a town road. So that's a severe impact. That was the same 25% reduction that Lyman has followed for access issues. So just basically with looking at the corresponding tax maps, identifying where the parcels that I pulled were situated, comparing it, saying, okay, check, that looks about the same, that looks about the same. It's never going to be perfect dollar and cents wise. That's why equity is so important. So upon evaluation of the data, I determined most of the data had the 25% reduction, including the Island House property. I drove to the 5 sites, took photos, compared the photos, and basically determined them to be similar issues, relative access issues. And if they were receiving 25%, I thought that that was equitable to also award 25% to this parcel.
Well, I can see why you used, I can
Yeah,
respond to that.
sure.
reply to that. I mean, I can see why you used the 25%. If I'm not mistaken, you used the 25% because it has been used in the past on parcels. That's all I hear. I don't hear any other, I use the 25% because we've shown in the past that the differences in values between waterfront properties and non-waterfront properties are a percentage, that they're the same percentage. I see nothing tying in the percentage with, in fact, why one piece of property is different from the other. And I think Jim mentioned that looking at the KRT land sales, there's nothing there that even approached looking at a piece of land that wasn't on a paved road with, maybe some of them weren't paved actually, but wasn't on a road easily accessible with utilities there. The 25%, just to say that you used it, I agree, you used it. But to say why that is fair or equitable, I don't see that in any way, shape, or form. I mean, what is fair or equitable is to somehow equate these values. And where are you equating the value? How can you take two properties? I went out and looked at, I think it was one of yours. There was a property you used on Bartlett Pond. And I think it was, and it's just a tiny little piece of land on there, but assessed, I guess, higher because it's waterfront. Or the ones on the Farnham properties. I think there were 3 properties owned by Farnhams, all on Bunganut. And they're valued at initially they were assessed at, must have been like $250,000. They have less than half the distance to get to a road and to utilities as my piece of property does, less than half. If we looked at Mr. Labby's estimate of $300,000 for a road and my calculation of maybe, I think it's 50,000 or something like that for electricity, you divide $350,000 by 2, you got $175,000 difference. And you're saying because I use 25%, that is more equitable than actually coming up with some kind of a plan where you use hard and fast objective dollars and cents. Because the values you come up with are all about dollars and cents, not percents. So
Can I ask a question?
Well, so
If he put a road in and he made access to the property and he put a power line in, you'd take away the 25%, right? You wouldn't add the cost of the power line. No. So if you put the road in the power line, then you lose your 25% reduction, and now the property's worth what it says it's worth.
exactly.
But I made that point to show you that that's what the 25% is for.
Well,
If you have a back lot,
I want to be, so we have to stay on here. So right now I
We'll
want,
have to mention some stuff.
right. And that's because I hear you, but it's their turn to sort of talk it out, and then we can ask. And I know what you were doing, and I should have stopped it, but so continue. And
okay, I mean, a house, Lori, if you're appraising a house, let's say you're going out because a property owner has just started putting up a new home. He's got a foundation and maybe he's even got the shell in it. And it's time to go out there and reassess it. What are you going to look at when you go out there? What are you going to do? Are you going to assess them at full value of a house?
With all due respect, that's not what we're here to discuss.
Well, I think that's a fair question.
This is to discuss your property and the
Right.
characteristics of it.
I agree with
I think we could be here and going in different directions, and that's really not the purpose of this hearing.
Well, then,
I do want to note, though, to that last comment that was discussed, the base lot, whether it's improved, or the base lot, whether it's unimproved, start, at the same dollar amount. Those are found in all of our land tables, and that is all across town. This is what is used, whether it's an improved parcel or not improved parcel. It is the same base value that you start with. It's just the way Lyman, it's our land tables. This is what we follow.
yeah,
Everybody has to be treated in accordance with this. That's why you start where you start. Yours happens to be out of all the land schedules, number one, you're already starting at the lowest base and you're going down lower
How am
because
I
of
start- I'm
access.
sorry, how was I
This
starting
is the
from-
land schedule one, standard low.
What did you,
That's yours.
did you not start me at 66,000 some odd
No, this
dollars
is-
for the first 5
This
acres?
is the land schedule used, and all the exponents get factored in with the CAMA system. That's what the CAMA system does. So it ends up being 68 once all of the factors and exponent. It's a long process. But it does come up with your 6 point something acres. It ends up being the $68,000 value in the beginning. But the point being, and the point that I would like you to take away from this is that the land schedules that were derived from KRT's market analysis and all, the base lot, whether it's improved, or the base lot, whether it's not improved, is the same dollar amount. And you just factor from there. And that's hopefully would help to
Can
make
you,
that more understandable.
can you show me a lot that is not started at the same price that my first 5 acres are? That isn't in another zone, for example, commercial or waterfront?
I'm not following the question.
You're saying they're all starting or mine started at the lowest level. I'm thinking of a lot over on the Day, if you follow the Day Road across 111, all the way down to Route 35, where Day Road meets Route 35, there's a beautiful open field right there with power lines on both sides of that corner lot. Beautiful level lot. I believe that's valued at the first 5 acres, 66,000 some odd dollars, 1,800 an acre for the next 10 acres, and then $800 after that. What type of lot are we looking at that is not starting with that? That's question number one. Question number two to you would be, why cannot, since we see these inequities in my presentations, we see the inequities resulting, why can't we start with a base figure that doesn't have paved road and power? And you simply look at it and say, aha, paved road and power, my base is going to be 66,000 for the first 5 acres.
So
what this
can I just,
says.
I want to, so with all due respect to both parties, I think that we've kind of went through here, and that's not the question for this meeting. Like, that's something that, I don't know who you talk to figure out if we can change the table, the land value table, but that's not what this is. Really, if you have any specific question for her regarding, did she misplace your land on the land table and where the 25% came from and why it's not more, that's really the purpose of the cross-examination specific to this one parcel that we're looking at. Because really we could be, there's a lot of things we could talk about, and that's just not the purpose of this meeting. And so we really need to focus on and I think she's answered that it's the base value for for a lot, and then you get the 25% reduction because you have an access problem or an access issue. And what she's explained, what I have heard, is that everyone who has an access issue gets a 25% reduction from their base value, and whatever that value is, that's where it comes from. And so we could walk in circles, and I just don't want to do that because that's not the purpose here. And so is there any other question for her regarding where those numbers came from? I don't want to compare other properties because you've made that point, and I think it's a clear point, but it's just not why we're here. Because
Well, my question is, what is being used then to determine this base value? We've said we don't have enough information from the KRT.
the land table. So, and that's what the town of Lyman is using. And
Mhm.
so for all lots, not just your lot, it comes right from the land table, which is something that is there. It's something that the town of Lyman uses, and that's a debatable. I don't know enough about that. That's something that could be brought at another meeting, but that's what the town of Lyman's using, which is where your value came from. And then the 25% reduction comes from the lack of access that you, when you requested the abatement,
Mhm.
she acknowledged and gave you the abatement.
And I think, isn't that the way all assessments work
Yes.
throughout the state?
I
So
guess
it's not
we've
just
jumped to-
Lyman.
we've
They
jumped
have
to
their own
re-ask
land
questions.
tables though.
Yeah.
Right.
And we are, yeah, I think we
Based
are
on
on the next.
market.
Okay. I assume that all properties similar to his that don't have access have the 25% reduction.
Well, it would,
All of them.
it's assessor discretion, okay? So it could be that some might have more, I don't know. But like I said, going back to my statement of, I extracted the data for access issue properties from the CAMA system. I took a look at where the majority fell, because there was more than 5. So I took a look at where the majority fell. I went to the tax maps and I looked at those map and lots. And then I looked at his map and lot. And I said, okay, looking at this and looking at this, that's similar. You know, there might be off of a private road. They might have to go through a right of way. They might have to be a back lot. Let me go out and take a look at these. Now I had his submittal and his picture of his access and what it looked like already. I went and looked at the ones that had the 25% reduction, and based on comments from past assessors, evaluated like, okay, so this is, I think I'm gonna go in this direction. I'm gonna try to figure out, is this what other people were doing when they did it? When they did the 25%. Took pictures, which you all have in your packets. They're similar. You
So,
saw the pictures going
No,
up
they're-
through woods.
So you're saying,
There's some, go ahead.
you're saying you're giving different deductions depending on where they are? Or is it 25%? Okay, it's.
Yeah,
I
think-
can't
I-
speak
I-
to past assessors. This was my first one that I had to do. What a past assessor, 20 years, 30 years, 10 years, 5 years, gave them, I can't go possibly
No,
try to
No,
justify
she's
that.
given, there is more for, because I've looked at some of these properties and like the ones that are given a 80% or a 40%, that's because you can't even get there from here.
One I couldn't
There
even
is
find.
no, yeah, but there is no way to get from any road to that property because it's actually, I mean, you talk about an island in the
Mhm,
middle of the,
exactly.
this is an island in the middle of a big piece of property. And I think those are like the ones that Jim had
Mhm.
brought up here and threw them up because they're not similar.
I wasn't following.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
confirm or deny that, but so,
Is that right, Jim?
That's correct.
okay.
Any other questions from the board?
No, we're at 2 weeks into our session, no. As long as equitably you've applied to all land, in other words. if
That's
it's
what I've
not a
tried to
road,
demonstrate.
Some sort of reduction was taken. 20, I don't know whether it's 25. Somebody got 35, somebody got 10, somebody, is that correct?
Well, I've also put notes from the past assessors. So if you looked at what I presented in my submission, my original abatement that was granted, you'll see the past notes. And again, they're past assessors' work. And that's what I'm going off of.
When you get a deed in, like mine, when it came in, do you
So
have a
hold,
procedure to follow?
so that's not, we're not in, we're moved on from that part. So really it's
From
our,
my asking questions?
yeah, I think we did. I think when we kind of
Well,
engaged with the
I feel
board.
that okay.
Well,
I
this
don't
is-
feel that you're addressing my issues at
This,
all.
your issue is, if I went as an appraiser and appraised your property, darn right, I would look at different things. You're not doing that. You're talking about, how many parcels do you have here?
Over 3,000, yeah.
And the trick here
It's
is to
massive,
be
right?
equitable. That's the whole 9 yards.
And my statement is, the
We
way,
don't think it's,
the way it was done, taking a percentage is far from equitable. You're taking a percentage of a number of, from lots that don't even tie together.
And
Something
this-
being down here on Jackson's Corner, right in back of where the marijuana place is there. There's a 10-acre, I think, parcel there. It's assessed at $100,000 right now because it's only being assessed at 25% of its value. So it's a $400,000 lot getting $300,000 break because it's 400 feet away from the road and the power
And
lines.
I believe there is no right-of-way access to that property.
Okay, so,
The
but,
people here own this
It's
lot and they
immaterial.
own that
Immaterial.
lot, and they're right next to each other, they could just.
We're not doing a private appraisal.
Right.
here. This is a broad, it's a broad stroke. Now, what we have to prove here is equity, where you treated fairly compared to,
everybody else. And so,
Okay.
so as the board chair, and I think we've been here, I think we're at over an hour right now. I think that this has been a pretty thorough, we listened and we looked at the properties that you talked to. We gave an opportunity and it was sort of like pulling off one property here, one property there, but really it's not coming up to the same. There's not a difference where you were treated unequitable to other town, like other, or the,
similar.
right. I think that's the piece. And I'm not disagreeing with you that,
No, I agree. Take a look at 300,000 for a road. In other words, we gotta pay you.
right, you should give that property away type of thing.
$300,000
Well, I'm not trying to be ridiculous about it. I'm sticking to that, just that 25% of being, you say equitable, yes, but it's a meaningless method.
Hey,
Treating people equitable, I don't know.
if you're talking about a private appraisal, it's a different ballgame completely.
Well, I don't know about completely.
All it is, believe me, I've been in this business for 33 years, 34 years. It's different. It's a broad stroke. And I don't know what to say. I mean, I see where you're coming from. I mean, but we're looking at equity here with everybody else in the town. Well, not everybody, but most. It's kind of hard. The assessor has a damn hard job, I'll tell you.
Oh,
So,
I don't disagree.
all right, so we gotta tighten this up here. So
Yes.
really I think that this process, and probably because we're a little bit green here, being our first time, but it's like, we really do need to move forward. And so I'm not sure, based on the property and what we're talking about, that there needs to be a closing remarks. I think that your remarks were your remarks, and I'm not sure that there's like an exclamation point that needs to be made. I think we know exactly how you feel, Mr. Bourgeois, and I think we know where the tax assessor came from. So, Jess, is there any public comment from you? Okay. So is there a motion to close the
I'll move to
hearing?
close.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so the public hearing's closed. So at this time, the board will deliberate and come up with an action.
I don't think there should be any. We're talking equity. We're not talking a private appraisal. If I go into a private appraisal of property, I'm going to look at the highest and best use. Hey, and we're going to factor in all this, but you can't do that town-wise. It's just a broad stroke of value. As long as it's not, he's picked out differently than everybody else. I can't find that.
Yeah, and I think she's bound in the methods that she uses by the state requirements. I don't know how you go beyond that. I mean, I understand
Oh,
I understand the situation perfectly well. But I don't see any way we could overturn it.
Right. I think that the thing in question here is every accessibility constraint equivalent? And I think that's probably the big thing in question. And in the town of Lyman, we have said yes, right? Like that's
No, we haven't actually said that. If you look at some of the properties in here, the ones that came, actually, George gave them to us. There's some in here that are valued that may have a higher factor. Like there's one here that's got a 75% factor because it's a back lot and there is no way to get there.
so that's different, right? Like that's
Well,
not
but it's access. It's accessing. It's an access.
Yeah, but it's,
If the access is impossible to get, that's one thing. If you can get to the access, it's another.
right. So I think like hard, once again, like if there's no access, then that's probably why the 75% makes sense. If there is access, however hard it is, it sounds to me that that's when you go through these properties, it's pretty consistently 25% is what you're getting the abatement for because of the access, to get the access is hard. And I don't know if of course there are things that are harder or less hard to get, but when we start doing that, what are we, I don't think that we as a board need to be
Can't
changing the
individually
town.
appraise.
Right. I mean, that's silly. And so the idea of like trying to be equitable to the tax burden that the residents of Lyman have. What I hear is that a 25% is good. And I appreciate that he filed for an abatement because he deserves the 25% abatement. I think that makes sense.
That's already, yeah. He's asking for more.
And I think what my feeling is what the assessor said in regards to why there's a 25% abatement. It's not about the value of the property or how much it's going to cost to get there. It's about the percentage granted is about the access. And this type of access problem gets a 25%.
Again, as long as it's done equitably, broad stroke, that's all you can do. We're not here to individually appraise a property.
All right. Any further discussion?
No, it ain't. Fine.
Is there a motion?
I move we accept the assessor's assessment,
We deny the.
deny the appellant, right?
Second.
All in favor?
One more thing we gotta do though, we gotta figure out how we're gonna write this up. Does anybody want to volunteer to throw something together? Because we've got to have a decision, a written decision.
So I think the written decision is going to say that based on the 25% abatement for access, that's what was given. That was the question.
I think it should say that based on the method that the assessor used to come up with the number, it's in accordance with the state law and we feel it's equitable. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Don, I mean, Don knows a lot more about this.
I'm just gonna make a
Yeah.
short little doc.
Yeah.
Can this be an email to the secretary?
I'm the secretary.
To the,
She's gonna be sending me something. I'm the one who has to sign it.
okay, I'm gonna send an email. Can we say that one more time? So based on the board finds,
The board finds that the method that the assessor used to develop the assessment was consistent with applicable with the state method of assessing properties. And we feel it was equitable. I guess equitable is the right term.
the board finds this equitable. Board.
Yeah.
Okay, so the board finds that the method the assessor used to develop the assessment was consistent with the state method of assessing properties. The board finds this equitable, therefore denying
Denying the
Denying the application. You have to put that in.
denying the appeal.
Yes.
Okay. Do I need to be specific about it? Like,
No, you're getting into,
okay. Does that work? Who do I email it to? Who do I email it to?
You can email it to me and Jess and I'll figure out where we're going from here.
why don't you email to all of us?
Yeah, email it to everybody, yeah.
Okay.
And I appreciate you coming in, Jess, because there's no way we could have sat here and scribbled notes and listened to everybody's testimony.
Thank you
This
again.
wouldn't have been.
Sorry, Don, I'm looking for, can you tell me your email?
Excuse me?
Your email?
Oh, DE Brand at.
Brand, no D. Yeah, and then got it at.
No caps.
Man, it won't matter.
Okay. DE Brand at myfairpoint.net. myairpoint.net.
Got it. Yep, you're there.
You want this?
Sure. Thanks.
I'll probably get a copy of that, right?
Oh, yes, you certainly will, yeah.
And that will come from you
I don't know. if it
on a
sends them out.
letterhead?
I guess, I think it comes from the select board clerk, because she's supposed to be our, yeah.
Okay.
So I will get with Lindsay and she'll do it on the letterhead and do whatever we're supposed to do.
Okay, sent. And so this documentation goes where?
We're gonna need copies of that, I think. Well, we got all that in the file. I'm sure Lori has a file, so we can, I think it all has to go together.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second to adjourn the meeting?
Yes, sorry.
All in favor? Aye, the meeting's adjourned.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you.
sorry,
Thank
we,
you, Judge.
I understand your point, and you did a lot of work to get there, and it makes a lot of sense. But let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
I need to excuse myself.
You
Yeah,
said
good.
you thought the property should be valued at 12,000. If I give you a check today, will you sell it to me for 12?
Well,
Because I'll buy it.
That's a famous question that's asked all